Welcome back to Advertising is Dead with Lekhini. I hope I pronounced it right. I'm generally bad at name pronunciations. And you have a lovely name, and I was trying to figure out how do I not screw this up? Like how do I make sure I
Thank
say
you.
this right?
You pronounced it right.
When I ran, the first time I came across your profile and ran through it, and I saw all the content there. There are multiple legs which connected to me, and I'll get into some of those. But what I thought would be a good way to start is how did it all start? How did um, I'm not even getting to the Instagram part of it. I'm just getting into how did the company start?
Yes, sure. So, honestly, this brand that we've, which now is people know it by the Indian Ethnic Company, was honestly like an experiment that we'd done. While we were growing up, my mom always used to make clothes for my sister and I, and every time we used to go out, we used to always have people ask us that, hey, where did you get it from? And everything that was there in the market, was something that was not necessarily that we really liked. And the things that we always liked were always, coming from a middle class family, it was always out of budget. So my mom, she used to go to exhibitions, collect crafts and fabrics, and create products which were truly unique. And we've never really bought our clothes. It was my mom always, who used to make absolutely everything for us. And while we were growing up, my sister and I, we were in all sorts of activities, which was in dancing and acting. And so somewhere, she thought that she did have a fashion designing practice then, although she did not have any. Yeah, so I was saying that my mom always had that keen inclination towards craft, and she had an inherent knack to design clothes, that aesthetic sense which was really natural. And she had no formal degree in fashion, and she started her practice, and it was doing pretty well. But while we were growing up, we were into dancing. My sister and I are both trained classical Odissi dancers, and I've also been an assistant choreographer for the movie Ram Leela and a few couple of movies. And like, I was totally into dance, and acting is also what we did. So she really thought that she wanted to dedicate her life towards helping us achieve our goals. So she left behind a dream. And come 2016 is when at that point in time was when I got admitted to my B school, and my sister got into medicine. And that's the time she thought that uh, you know life's come to a full circle, and my daughters are now busy, and she had done her job. And now is the time she thought that she wanted something constructive to look forward to in the latter part of her years. And that's when I thought that why not, why don't you get back into doing what you do best, which is creating beautiful clothes. And that's actually the time when Instagram informal shopping was really gaining steam. There were small businesses which were informally just putting up products and selling. So I thought that why not just try it. And she was not very technologically savvy, and I thought I'll just help her with that. So we created a set of few silhouettes, 10, 12 silhouettes. And we thought that even if they don't sell, we'll just, like, my sister and I or my mom will wear it, because we love these clothes in any case. Handcrafted and Indian stuff is what we wear. So it was just an
Yeah.
experiment. And one day I created the profile on Instagram and Facebook. And literally, if you see the first photos, it's my sister standing at the corner of our house, which was like there is puppety, and there's a terrible background. And I don't know why I would have like cut her head also. I've not even shown her face. And that's how we put up the first few products. And literally the next day we had two orders, one from Goa and one from Kerala. And we were like, oh my god, this was like, we just thought that we were sure that these won't sell so easily, because A, we had no idea of how to do business, because none of
Mm.
us come from a business background. And B, that this was just going to be an experiment. Matlab, chala to chala, warna theek hai. No, I mean, we have other things to, I mean, I was going to study, and for her it was anyways a hobby. But literally the next day, those designs, we sold one to a customer in Goa and one in Kerala. And we were like, this is so amazing. Like, literally sitting in our bedroom with absolutely no investment in terms of photography or modeling or nothing, like through a social media platform like an Instagram and Facebook, we were like absolutely ready to sell a product in a day, and it sold off, and we were like, we have to see this through now. So that's how things started. And in 2016 is when we had bought like a batch of 50 meters fabric with an investment as low as 50,000, and today we are crossing an annual turnover of close to 24 crores.
What I'm fascinated by most times is how businesses kind of grow over time, right? And when I look at, that's what, when I ran through the entire profile, there were a few things that stuck out to me. One is that generally when you say the word ethnic, and no matter how much people have kind of changed this in many ways, right? It still does kind of stick towards, okay, it's little, it'll end up being slightly more old school. It doesn't feel as young. Those are perceptions which are there. And when you start talking, and I think of the terms you use, right? You think of using artisans, you're talking about, just like the kind of silhouettes you're kind of building out, kind of garments you're building out. And what I saw was an extremely young Instagram account and a young page, and I found that was a lot of fun for me to look at, because I said, okay, this is a great way to take what has always been most traditionally the core of our entire textile and garment, how do I put it, foundation, and figure the right way to package it for consumers across the board, so across age groups, across different ones, but yet stay true to it. Has that been at some? It's a long-winded question. I don't even know why I went so long with it, but at some point, has it always been a line to say, okay, this is what we will stick to, this is what we will focus on and grow from? And did you kind of set that very early on, or it just organically happened?
So I'm glad, I think, that came out, because that's exactly what the brand stands for. We want to make contemporary contemporary ethnic clothing, which is, the silhouettes are really contemporary, but they're still rooted in tradition. And that's exactly how our taste is. The reason why we used to love making our own clothes was that everything outside in kurtas or kurtis or that kind of clothing was either very typical or either too modern, or something which was designer was too out of budget. So something that really was an amalgamation of both and really rooted in tradition is what we loved wearing. And all the pieces are actually a reflection of what me or my sister or my mother or now when we come to realize it, that the modern day women, that's how they are. They are contemporary in their outlook, but there's still some tradition out there. So I think that's the balance that we've always wanted to maintain. So even if you see the way our saris are photographed, some saris are really, really traditional, but we always wear it with like a halter neck blouse or a sleeveless blouse or something, to really make it chic, contemporary, so that the appeal is universal. And as we grow, the older generation which used to wear saris is going to grow older. So there is that cascading happening of the style of that garment. Unless we make it relevant to the youth of today or the young adults of today, it's going to lose. I mean, that garment is going to be history. So that's not what we want that garment to be and perceived, and that's always been the way we want our products to be.
So did that also kind of play into the kind of content you wanted to create when you're putting this out on social? The highlight for me is how the reels part started for you. I want to really get into that, like how you started using reels and I found that unique, because I thought that's a great way to show. I mean, you're showing the silhouettes, you're showing the garment in all its glory, but also you're making it supremely entertaining to watch. Like it is a reel which I made my 4-year-old daughter watch it, and she found it fun. So she had a lot of fun scrolling through it, and she scrolls through reels much faster than even I can do, I've realized. And I found that great, is that you took entertainment, but you took a way to showcase all aspects of the garment. So has content been a core thing from day one, because you started off as social, or using social platforms to kind of push people to sale? Was that always a conscious thing?
It was, and honestly, since we are a brand which has been born on social media, Instagram and Facebook continue to be the primary modes of our operation, and we've honestly grown, and keep growing because of the features that Instagram and Facebook release. So it's important for us that every time a new feature, that is released, and Instagram focuses on a certain type of content, it's important that we as a brand leverage and find how we can use it creatively, uh, to kind of showcase our products. And the brand from day one has always been about showcasing real women,
Mm.
and it's always about either my sister and I showcasing the products. I am slightly on an XL size, and she's on the XS small size. So that diversity of showing models which are relatable across garments. And even if it's not us, I've always reached out to a set of friends who could come in and do the who could be the face of the brand. So that's always been a very conscious decision. And the idea was that real women are, they're not all models. Not all models can dance. Not all models are more than just being models. And real women have so many aspects. So I think it was important that we also brought in what our inherent talents were, which were dancing and entertainment. And
Yeah.
we've been brought up that way. And I come from a background who is absolutely into arts, and it's very inherent to us. So and we've been dancing in a sari all our lives. And
Mm.
the moment, I mean, we launched a sari very recently. We launched saris as a category only in September and October. And
Mm.
also video as a continuous format to engage users was not done before, and that was always on our it was always on the anvil. We always wanted to do it, but we were not finding the right format, because what was happening is that either post educational videos were getting too boring, and those usual fashion videos were again too common.
Mm.
And there was nothing that would really catch the eye. And with the TikTok ban came in the reels
Mm.
with a 15-30 second format.
Mm.
And we were like that, this is it. I think we found a good mix of a good amount of time where we could dance and showcase our new collection, and which would be it was just a perfect timing. I mean, 30 seconds is not too long, so that it kind of takes away the focus from the garment, and it does not look like it's a dance show or it's a dance page. But there was equal footing to really showcase the properties of what the sari that we were launching were. They were
Mm.
lightweight, they were made in cotton, they
Mm.
were they were feather light, they were made of natural dyes. And if young girls like my sister and I and my friends could freely dance in it, so
Yeah.
could you.
Yeah.
And that's how hassle free and fuss free it would be. So that was the whole idea. And we just met for a photo shoot. And all of us being dancers, we were like, let's just shoot this reel today. We should just have one reel. And in literally in 15 minutes, we thought of the steps. And we were wearing a sari, we tried it. And Kagnare was the first song we did. And literally that first very reel hit 1 million views.
Mm.
And the collection was sold out. Our very first launch of
Mm.
sari, and the entire set of collection was sold out even before we could really post that, hey, we are launching the sari, these are the products. That reel
Yeah.
did the thing. So yeah.
So, and that's what's interesting, that because if you're just seeing how social commerce is kind of growing as well, now obviously Instagram's going to launch a whole new set of tools they just announced. Um, do you almost see, and I know at some point you did build out a website, and you're pushing traffic to traffic towards that as well. Do you still see this as being a strong driver to really grow your business, saying it's my content people kind of come for, it's the way they connect with it because they feel like they're part of a community that stands for a few things, but
Correct.
also at some level it's so much more easier, right? Like you're seeing, like you said, real people wearing these, you're seeing, and I love, and also you're seeing what the brand stands for. Like I saw the the stories highlight about how you showed the entire operations, right? Entire
Yeah.
team, everybody who's a part of it, and that just humanizes companies. I feel that doing that just makes you know who are the people behind it, how, and it was a happy bunch of people, and I love seeing that, and so I know, I'm sure that happened naturally, but has showing what goes behind the scenes as well been a strong focus in terms of saying this is what we stand for and this is actually how we do it?
Yes, definitely. And I think because of the tools that Instagram provides
Hmm.
and the kind of connect that you have on Instagram with the customers, I think that makes it so much more easier, right? And as you said, humanizing the brand, we have so many big brands out there, big names that people shop from. But if you see, their engagement is not much because people don't really know. It's just the
Yeah.
brand that they're interacting with. But who is making the clothes? Who are the people working for the brand? Is it being made ethically? Is it not being made ethically? And I think that has been a very strong driver because even in the lockdown, something, everything was shut,
Hmm.
and we had no helpers, and we were like, my dad was literally packing each and every uh, product that was to go out, and we shot a video telling them that, hey, it's like 12 a.m. in the night and we are busy packing all these products, and I showed my dad who was involved, and the kind of support, the kind of love that those stories get, and that also helps you to get a lot of sales because people love supporting businesses which are authentic and
Yeah.
which kind of show that authenticity. So I think it's so important to really show what goes behind because uh, people love to see the story. It's just
Yeah.
not the product. Even when we are doing a reels shoot, we show them behind the scenes, and we've seen, I mean, just posting photos and really going behind and talking about the story, it lends so much of credence to the process and the product. So it's important that, whenever we either launch a new product or a new category, it's a conscious decision that we always showcase the behind the scenes. And I think the tools make it amazing, and so easy. Like an IGTV, I can have like a full-fledged, I we also did one story which was about how the crafts happen at the
Hmm.
artisan's end, the entire
Hmm.
process of a particular craft, right from the time it is dyed till the time it reaches your house, what is that story. And then, the girls who are my friends in the reels, we also connected with the customers on a live session, and we literally had close to 1000, 1200 people, on the live. And usually, most brands, big brands, because they are not humanizing and maybe not really adding that personal touch, they usually have close to 200, 300 people at a live at one time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of engagement it gets, and it's beautiful when you get to interact with, with the people. It also encourages you, it gives you feedback, and it just helps you to grow.
Uh, you know, just there's also been this conscious move, and I think this is generally how consumers are moving as well, right? We went through this entire phase of fast fashion where you just you have large retail chains, you're buying a lot of stuff, you're constantly buying stuff which doesn't last you, is not something you hand down. And I've
Correct.
seen this especially with ethnic wear, is that it's something that is handed down, right? Like I have friends who talk about this is a sari which kind of came down from their mother or from their grandmother. I know my mom talks about the same, and and I've seen that happen. I don't know if actually haven't seen that happen with guys as much, but I think that's a whole different problem we have. None of us have the same choices, I guess, or maybe it's not as nice to share. I don't know. It's not this point, but it's been a conversation, right? And at some point, I feel at the present time, there are a lot of consumers moving to saying, what can I buy that is sustainable from the fact that it is something that is going to last a while. It isn't going to be something that just wears out and I have to throw it away. And also
Correct.
something that, in a way, has a human feel to it. I think people really are looking for that connection there, and the solutions don't necessarily have to be from outside. They can actually
Correct.
be in how we've done it all this while, and craftsmanship and everything else. So just that aspect of it. Has there been have you looked at scaling that aspect just in terms of like the different kinds of artisans you work with, different
Hmm.
kinds of fabrics, and just kind of molding your business around that more and more?
Definitely, and honestly, sustainability as a concept is growing, and I do see the trend, increasing even more because customers are getting very very conscious
Hmm.
on what they are consuming, and the kind of ecological impact it's leaving on the planet, and hence, as a brand, packaging is obviously one part, wherein you use a lot of plastics and you want to do away with it, and we've already worked on it, but the idea as a brand is to have a chain of sustainability right from the way we source the products
Hmm.
uh, till the time it reaches the customer. So the idea is to have more fabrics which are just inherently sustainable. For example, a fabric that we use is called kala cotton,
Hmm.
and that has its root in, you can define it as an absolutely sustainable product because the cotton crop is grown organically.
Hmm.
It is rainwater harvested without any pesticides, and uses very little, water, to grow. And plus, it's harvested by hand. It is hand woven.
Hmm.
It is hand spun. So, only until now you can see the kind of, the way it's been grown, plus the kind of, people it is employing at every stage, right from the farming to the harvesting. Plus, it is hand spun and hand woven, so
Hmm.
it's not machine made.
Yeah.
It's it's supporting the livelihood of the craftsmen and the community as a whole. So it's hand spun, it's hand woven, and then it comes to us. It's made by our tailors, which are artisans in their respect, and then it is packed in an eco-friendly manner, and then the life. And once it reaches the customer, and the customer buys it, that's the time when when a customer buys that one product, it's actually helping sustaining the cycle, the livelihood of so many artisans in the process, which a fast fashion does not do. And the life of that fabric is also, longer. It's more sturdier. It can, withstand wear and tear, and you can actually wear it for years without it, becoming like a rag. So I think that's the beauty of having truly sustainable products. And as a brand, we want to move to having, uh, you know, if a hand block print is happening, it should happen on a fabric which is sustainable.
Hmm.
And that's, I mean, we are not fully there, but we are getting there, and that's what we consciously want to do. And we also use a lot of natural dyes,
Hmm.
made from natural indigo, madder root, and we avoid excessively bright colors which are made from chemicals.
Hmm.
So even if you see the brand logo, it's a brown, it's a madder,
Yeah.
it's a earthy
Yeah.
color. And the collection also that we have is we are using natural dyes,
Hmm.
and that's what we believe in, and that's what we want to continue to build on.
Um, how much have you kind of learned from your community, it's a community of customers who both interact with you on social, but also who
Hmm.
you interact with when they're buying stuff from you, when you're going back and
Hmm.
forth. And I know that's a strong build. I've seen that
Hmm.
really strong D2C brands have almost a community vibe with their customers and not just a transaction
Correct.
vibe, right?
Correct.
If you look at the time you started to now, what have you kind of learned about them that you might have had some preconceived notions, but before you go when you got into this, but over time, what have you learned that surprised you, and what have you kind of learned that's almost helped you evolve how the business functions?
So honestly, at every stage, I have always, like, even till date, I ensure that, the social media as a channel, I am continuously observing all the comments and, monitoring what is the feedback that you get from customers, because it's so raw, it's so true, the way
Hmm.
they write their comments and the way they give you feedback. It's absolutely helped us to shape so many things, in our journey of these years. So for example, something like a customization,
Hmm.
initially when we started, we thought that we'll make products which are uh, one size fits all, like an XS, S, M, L. But over the time, we realized that not all customers are of the same height as the
Hmm.
model, right? So the
Hmm.
product is not going to fit them the same way. So it would always be better if I could. I like this kurta, but maybe if I could change the sleeve, because I
Hmm.
don't wear
Yeah.
short sleeves or long sleeves. So eventually we've graduated to a model where we are we've moved from manufacturing and keeping products to making it to order, so that people can really people love designing. People love, even if they're buying something standard, they want to, I have added some personal touch to it, or it's according to what I like, and it's not what you get everywhere. So I think
Yeah.
that feedback, sometimes when a woman is pregnant, she can buy a kurta from a particular brand, but she can't put a nursing zip on it, which makes it nursing friendly.
Yeah.
And we got this request from one customer, and we were like, this is great. I mean, if we make it on order, we can do this for all the mothers out there who are, expecting and doing something, and they can actually customize it the way they want. And I think that's a major the reason also why we have a repeat ratio of as high as 50%. 50% of our customers are repeat customers, and the reason being that they are able to customize every part of that product. And that's the model we've graduated to, and I think that's the model we want to really grow with, because I think customization is here to stay. Because even if you see the way, even in advertising, the way the messaging is working, everything is really targeted and customized for that person. And I see that trend growing, and that's something that we found through the feedback that we've got from customers.
I like the fact you said customization, right? And what I always said is, eh, way back in the day, India had some of the best. It was the best market for anything you wanted customized. Like, be it
Correct.
like I remember my grandfather pretty much wore every single shirt and pair of trousers was always something that's made by one person for a specific length, because he said my sleeve needs to be at a certain length in my arm, right? And I've never understood that, but I understand that now. Like, now I appreciate the fact that you can get a shirt made with a specific measurement, and it just makes you feel so much nicer rather than just picking something off the shelf. And I'm
Correct.
guessing that goes across the board with everybody who is looking to buy right now. What I feel is also interesting, and a bit of a segue here, is that I read a line, and I think you said that, is that your mother was your co-founder at the age of 55, which I think is one of the most amazing things. And I look at this from a very different angle, primarily because my mom ran a boutique for a good couple of decades, if not more. She's going to be angry because I don't remember the exact number of years, but more than 2 decades, my mom ran it, and I know, and I've seen it from stage one, when how she started off, how she grew it, how she built her network of suppliers and artisans and tailors and everything else, and unlike you, where you said, okay, mom, this should be a business you should do. Me and my sister doing what we were doing with our careers at some point, and she kept doing it herself. But I mean, I look at what you kind of built out. Um, it's I think it's a great partnership where a parent and a kid kind of come together and say, we kind of complete each other to kind of build this, right, and let's do this together. I feel there's a beauty to that. But what I want to ask is, how is it working with your mother as a co-founder? It's a question I've been meaning to ask.
Honestly, it's great, because as you mentioned, right, we complete each other, and that's our key strength. I mean, the brand's key strength is that the two main people who are leading the brand have very complementary skills. So I've done my MBA, I know marketing, I understand social media, and she understands craft. So the product and the sales is well taken care of. But obviously, I mean, what I love about her is that at 55, uh, she had never used a computer before she was 55. And handling an e-commerce backend is not a joke.
Hmm.
It's technical. And if you've observed people of that age, they don't really learn how to be
Hmm.
technologically savvy, because they want to give up. They're like, it's as it is. It's not something I want to use, and it's not a time I want to invest in. But she really did it all. She YouTubed, and she found all the courses that she could take, and she learned computers thoroughly. And we are hosted on Shopify, and she absolutely mastered Shopify's backend. And as a child, you must be knowing how children get annoyed with teaching their kids. They usually don't have the patience. So I used to always assume that this is so easy, and it
Yeah.
was always very difficult for me to explain a lot of things. But she honestly did it herself without any help of
Hmm.
of me. And even right now, our inventory systems are, she is on top of it. She knows it better than anyone else. So it's amazing to, see that kind of drive in her at 55.
Mm.
And what's also intimidating is that she works 24/7. And at 2 o'clock, where I'm sleeping, she'll be like, this kurta is sold out on the website, and this artisan is not well, and this stock isn't going to come. And so, I mean, she's working
I want to
24/7,
see
but
how you're
sometimes,
going to have a chat about work-life balance with your mother. That is a conversation which I which I think would be very interesting.
yeah, I mean, it's tough, honestly, because, honestly, there is a generation gap. They don't understand sometimes, uh, you know that you like spending time with your friends, and you can take time off. That's not
Mm.
the concept that she has. She works 24/7. But the flip side to it is that I think that's what's also grown the brand, and it's also
Mm.
pushed me to do, give my best. Because honestly, I had left to do my MBA, and
Mm.
I was in Vizag for 1 year, and she was all alone here
Mm.
managing the brand. And that's the time when the business really started growing. And I thought that, I don't know, why do I need a job? My mom is earning more than me. It's high time I quit the job and come back. So I think it's also her drive that has that kept the business afloat when I was not there and managing remotely. But it's intimidating at times, because obviously, because of the age, there are always going to be differences in the way, for example, culture. Work
Mm.
culture is also, their perception of work culture in their time was very different. Sometimes they do think that the number of hours that you spend, amounts to good work. And while I come from a different background, and I mean, we both have very different concepts. So obviously we are at loggerheads on a lot of things, but on the core key aspects of the brand, there's absolutely no disconnect or discord that we have. And I think that's what has kept us going.
Uh, if I have to ask you, where do you see this entire space that you function in as a business kind of going ahead? If you had to look at, say, okay, these are learnings which I have had, which anybody who wants to run a similar business, which let's say
Hmm.
common pillars, right? Primarily D2C, functioning on
Hmm.
something that is extremely sustainable, ethnic at its core, and so on and so forth. What are trends that you've seen which someone who's starting off today can kind of learn from?
Sure. So I think the first would be to, start digital first more than anything. Usually what comes to our mind when we do clothes is that, I'll hold an exhibition, or maybe
Mm.
I'll start a small shop, or something which has a touch and feel aspect to it. But I feel that digital really gives you, a launch pad to start your business. And I
Mm.
think uh, now, with the set of advertising tools that Facebook and Instagram provide, uh, honestly, for us, being a bedroompreneur,
Mm.
having started our journey in a bedroom, it would have been impossible to have moved out from being just a hobby brand
Mm.
if it was not for, if our brand was not digital first, or
Yeah.
if it hadn't used the advertising, the digital platforms of Facebook and Instagram to reach out to a wider audience. So I would also always say that start digital first, be it whatever product. Because I think, especially with Instagram and Facebook launching, so making it more shoppable,
Mhm.
and bringing in features which are, something as easy as being able to check out on Instagram. I mean, there'll be a time when you will not need a website. You will just need to put your products on Instagram and Facebook. So I mean, the cost of doing business is also very less, and the investment is low. So, and to sum it up, do digital first is what I believe. And I feel that it's very important that, what I see in a lot of new brands is that, do take a leaf from bigger brands, but do add a sense of your uniqueness to it.
Mm.
Sometimes, you get so, intimidated by big brands, and that you want to be like them, but somewhere you really lose what you really stand for, which makes you unique, and that helps you to really break the clutter. And especially for the ethnic, wear segment, I think it's important that, you start adapting styles which are slightly on the contemporary styles, side, and really appeal to the youth, because uh, the mature audience is graduating. I mean, they will
Hmm.
grow older. So how will you really get new people to really try your product? So I think there needs to be a certain uh, your product needs to be somewhere, rooted towards being young, youthful in your styles, in your designs. Yes, and yeah, I think, yeah, that's majorly it.
Uh, uh, Towards the closing part of every episode, I ask a bunch of random questions to all my guests. They have nothing to do with what you do. It's much more
I
questions about
really
you.
suck at
Uh,
rapid fire.
it's never rapid. I've tried to make that. I stopped calling it rapid fire very early on in this podcast because at no point is anything rapid. Uh, but apart from running a business, what is it that you spend a lot of time consuming or doing, or just like kind of focusing on, that people would be like, okay, you have time for that also, or do you actually focus on that as well? What would that thing be?
Definitely dance.
Hmm.
I love
That's not
going for
fair.
my
That's
contemporary
part of what
classes.
you do as a brand as well. So,
I love cooking actually, and Instagram's feed. I'm watching a lot of Korean shows, so now
hmm,
it's like full of ramen noodles
hmm.
and kimchi, and I love trying those dishes. So I think cooking.
Awesome. I actually, yeah. I have a newly found love for ramen, which I never thought I'd
Mhm.
had. It never looked appetizing to me, but
Yeah,
I
it
feel
was.
it always looked like, okay, this is like uncooked soup. Like paka nahi abhi tak is what I always wonder.
It,
And the
it
first time you
does.
try it, and you're like, okay, man, this is amazing. Like I should have this more often. It sounded so bad when I said paka nahi, but anyway. um, what can you put together in an instant?
Maggie. Yeah.
Anything that you watched, listened to, or read recently that you would recommend?
I love the book called Grit,
Mhm.
and I love that book. Reason why is that it really tells you the secret to success is not talent,
Hmm.
and if you persevere and if you have the grit, you can really do it all. So I just love that book a lot.
And what is generally my final question, which is always a play on the name of the show, is why do you think sustainable fashion will not die?
I think sustainability is here to stay, because we don't want our planet to die,
Hmm.
and as consumers, we are becoming more conscious, and which is why sustainability won't die.
Thank you so much for doing this. This has been fabulous. I've had a lot of fun. You have inspired me to have a conversation with. I know my mom listens to all my podcasts. So, like, Ma, I'm going to have a conversation with you about this. You and I already had a pre-chat, but yeah, now she's going to hold me to this, and I will have to figure a way to make this happen. But yeah, thank you for inspiring. I'd say kid-parent partnerships, and more of us need to do this.
Thank you so much. I think the pleasure was all mine, and this was a absolutely fun podcast, and I am honored to be a part of this. Thank you so much, Varun.
Thanks for coming on Advertising is Dead.
Thank you.